Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more months than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however, emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Jan Ferguson. Jan is a consultant, certified master NLP practitioner, and NLP trainer who served in law enforcement for 32 years. Jan has dedicated his life to empowering individuals to achieve even more in life and business. He has earned numerous awards and certifications, including the President's Call to Service Award, several Presidential Volunteer Service Award Gold Level, multiple insurance designations, and numerous other law enforcement awards. Jan is a loving father and husband who has been married for over 34 years. Jan's greatest passion is to empower individuals to achieve next level success. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Jan. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thank you, Dwight. Pleasure being here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, you're welcome. Just for the listeners, we met each other in another group we both belong to, and I was just fascinated with some of the things that you shared and why I really wanted you to come on the show. And I believe you wanted to too, is we have a lot of commonalities and similarities that I think will both serve each other as well as the listeners. So, Jan, one of the things in my life that's really intrigued me is the wording. People don't really, you talk about the origin story. People, well, what do you mean? Well, most people in not just podcast world and life in general, when they meet somebody, they'll say, what's your background? Tell me your story. Mm-hmm. And what they're really talking about is what's happened in your life in, let's say, since you graduated high school or college or university. I don't think that's enough. And Marvel and the Star Wars universe proved that to me when they start movie series is in the middle. And then once they're successful, they think that the beginning is, now it's okay to tell you the beginning. All right.
Absolutely.
I want to know the beginning now. I want to know your origin story and what the key things from your childhood, right back to childhood to adulthood, that led you to where you're at currently. And it doesn't matter how long it is. I want you just to share whatever it is, right from childhood to adulthood. And I'll be taking some great notes, I imagine. So if you could please tell me your origin story.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I was born and raised in Yonkers, New York, which is just north of the Bronx, and to a loving family, the American dream type of thing. And my dad was at the time TV repair person. TV was just big, starting in the 50s, and my mom, of course, at the time was stay-home mom. And religious family, loving family, and I'm the oldest of three. I've got two younger sisters. One was born 2 years after me, and the other 2 years after her. So we were always a close family. Of course, my sisters and I used to bicker back and forth all the time, just like kids will do. And he touched me, she touched me, type of thing. She didn't do her chores, all this kind of stuff. So we had an absolutely normal childhood. As we grew up, I did notice, and this might be maybe a somewhat normal thing, but my father always kind of navigated towards the girls. They could always do nothing wrong, and I was the one who was always either in trouble, maybe deservedly so sometimes, but maybe not. And I remember I was like 14 years old. And again, my dad was not one who liked sports. We didn't go to baseball games, football games, or anything like that. I really didn't do any of that until I got into the dorms in college. And but it was very much where I, at that point in time, at about 14 years of age, I kind of wanted more of the fatherly experience, so to speak. And I was a Boy Scout, started off as a Cub Scout and worked my way up. My dad did become, I believe, an assistant scoutmaster, and he used to go on a few camping trips with us. I was lucky to be in a very, very active troop, and we used to go, now again, we were in the Northeast. We used to go camping every once a month, no matter what it was set up beforehand. We knew where we were going. Didn't make any difference. It could have snowed 2 feet the day before we went. So, in life experiences, that was a good thing, because it allowed you to really take care of yourself. I know that I was able to do that. You could put me anywhere right now, and with minimal supplies, and I'm sure I could, survive at least to get to someplace. And so that was really good training as far as that's concerned. And it did give me a little bit more interaction with my father, even though, he was responsible, maybe with another, adult or whatever, for the rest of the kids. And so I wasn't spending quality time with him. But then I remember, I believe it was age 14, he wanted my help. We had like kind of like a brownstone from that you'd hear about in New York all the time. It was a multifamily type of thing. We owned the house, our family did, and but there were, I believe, 4 families. Myself, our family rather, my great uncle and my aunt, and then 2 renters in the upper part. But it was a flat roofed type of building. And so on occasion, he would go up and tar the roof. And I remember him asking me to help him. And I thought that was the best thing since sliced bread. I was doing something with my dad that my sisters weren't involved. And I even got out of chores for that whole weekend because of what we were doing. And so, that to me was like the best thing since sliced bread. And of course, then after that, it really didn't last. And, as much as I hate to say it, I didn't have maybe the father-son relationship that a lot of guys do, especially when it comes to sports and things like that. And so I kind of felt like I was left out a little bit with regard to that. So it left me to my own, devices as far as, meeting and associating with my friends in the neighborhood and this type of thing. I'm not going to say it damaged me in any way or anything. It's just maybe something that I really, really wanted a little more of. And so I made sure that I was at least available when I had, children. And so then after that, I was, I graduated parochial school in the 8th grade, went to high school. Nowadays, there's a lot of junior high, but I went through 8th grade, then high school. And in high school, I got involved in some intramural sports, went to parochial high school as well in another city, and got involved with the drama club, and the chorus type of club. And I was involved, and actually a lot of clubs, became president of some of them. And that really gave me the interaction, especially it was an all-male school with a lot of adult mentors. In fact, there's a priest who just passed away in the last 2 years who I had kept contact with, and he was probably one of the best role models and mentors that I've ever had. And but it was, again, an uneventful time. I wasn't the best student, but I wasn't the worst either. And I was more interested in the after school events, which obviously involve girls, because you can't have a drama club without and have a play without girls for the girl parts. And so we had sister schools that came in. And so that's probably when my grades went down a little bit more, to be expected. But other than that, I got my varsity letter in dramatics. I had fun doing all that. Again, I wasn't much into sports. Can probably say I'm really not now. I never really played baseball. I remember as a kid, in fact, I tried out for a little league team, and I was crushed when I didn't get picked. Of course, I had no real skills or anything like maybe some of the other kids did, but I remember that. But I was an excellent swimmer. I tried to do that. I tried to get on the swimming team, but I was more of I guess maybe you could call it a survivalist type of swimmer. I could stay afloat, for a long, long time. I wasn't the fastest. Did a lot of breaststroke and things like that, but that's not what competitive swimming is all about. So even in high school, when I tried out for the swimming team, I didn't make that either. So I just knew that sports wasn't for me as far as any type of extracurricular activity. That's when I went into the drama club. I enjoyed doing all that. It was all learning experience as far as I was concerned, because I realized what my limitations were and what I was actually good at. And so as much as it maybe stung a little bit, I'm not going to say I was hurt, but maybe that it stung a little bit. I learned a lot from those experiences. And like I said, I really enjoyed being around the girls and everything, and especially junior and senior year, which you just didn't get in sports. So I wasn't one of the jocks, but we had our own. I wasn't a nerd either. We had our own kind of clique that was the others, for lack of a better word. A lot of those kids, the unknown kids that just carried on all the time and were good kids and just went forward. I was liked by pretty much all the teachers, lay and religious, and just went on that way. Graduated somewhere in the middle of my class, nothing special, and I went to a parochial high school. I mean, college initially. Oh no, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. I went initially to college in New York, and did 2 years there. I was initially a psychology and what they called at the time EDP, electronic data processing major, and didn't do much in the electronic data processing and the psychology at the time with the instructors they had there. Boy, I just wasn't getting it. They did a lot of accounting for the EDP type of part, and I wasn't an accountant. Why they were teaching us accounting, I really have no idea. I guess they expected us to be accountants and use data processing. I don't know. But debits and credits, as much as I know about them now, back then it was Greek to me. And so I just continued on. I went through my sophomore year there, and I made a mistake that was such a small mistake that it changed my life, and it was a good thing. I actually had written a paper for, I think it was a psychology class, I can't recall now. And I added in there about a half a page of a quote that I got from a periodical or something that I was using as reference. I forgot to mark that in the bibliography that I had used it from something else. Well, my teacher, instructor, professor, for whatever reason, knew about that book and said that I was plagiarizing. And so, yeah, we had the big teachers meeting and everything. And they said, well, we're going to have to suspend you. And I said, it was a simple mistake. What the heck? And so I spent the next 6 months not going to school. And I worked for a large corporation at the time instead in the mailroom, and got a real good experience on, working outside of, a school setting. I applied then to a parochial college thinking, oh, I'll have to do my sophomore year all over again. But I had enough credits, and I went in as a junior. And that was in Minnesota. I went to a different state. really had no, for lack of a better word, any anxiety. I didn't have any homesickness. I was out on my own, and I kind of felt good about it. And after my first year there, I decided to stay out there. So I stayed out in Minnesota, finished school, and switched my major from psychology to sociology. And I think that was the start, really, of where I really wanted to help people. Not so much, I didn't want to be a, a social worker, and I didn't really want to be a psychologist, but I wanted to help people. And I didn't really know how at the time. Um, but I always knew in the back of my head, I had an uncle who was a law enforcement officer. And I just knew that that's probably something I wanted to do. And but at the time, because of shows like Adam 12 and all the cop shows at the time, and with the 70s being the bad time as far as our economy was concerned, uh, at that time, everybody that had corporate jobs that were being laid off, all were trying to become cops. They didn't want to for the career, they wanted to just for the salary. And I'm here to tell you that in law enforcement, you just can't do that. You have to, it has to be something deep inside that you really want to do. You can't do it for the salary because it's just not the same. You can't help people, in my estimation, and do it professionally unless you really have a deep, deep want to help people. And so I did whatever I could to try to test. There, I tested for St. Paul Police. I was in the Twin Cities at the time. Tested for the St. Paul Police Department, didn't get accepted. I went into, at that time, I then ended up, before I went into any other of my jobs, I actually started off in private security, figuring, okay, that'll give me a little bit of information towards law enforcement. And actually, I was still going to school at the time because as a junior and senior, I was able to arrange my schedule where I had all my classes basically Monday, Tuesday, and half the day Wednesday. And then so Wednesday night starting at midnight were 12-hour shifts. Then Thursday and Friday and Saturday, I was a security guard for all practical purposes, but I was a mobile one. And so we went to accounts in different parts of the cities and metro area and made inspections, wrote them down, and this type of thing. But it was something that I wanted to do. I was an armed officer and had a little bit of prestige, had a little bit of knowledge what it was like to be out there, kind of. And that just made it even more so that I really, really, really wanted to do this. But as I tested for different places, it just wasn't happening in Minnesota for whatever reason. I tested for Minnesota State Patrol. The place that I tested in the Twin Cities, now there were 9 locations that were testing that one Saturday. And the place I was testing at had 2,000 applicants. It was in an a large auditorium. And they must have had 500 tables set up. And with people kind of sitting opposite each other, a little apart, so you couldn't cheat during the test. Altogether, it was my understanding that in all the 9 locations, there were close to 10,000 people that were testing that day, and there were 25 positions open, of which 6 were for white males.
Wow.
So I tested really high, but I had no, how can I put it, none of the special things that they were doing in the 70s because of affirmative action. If you, in fact, there was a police officer that was a St. Paul police officer that wanted to go into the state troopers. And he told me, we were talking before the test during several breaks. And he said, the way it works, you get extra points if you're a veteran, extra points if you're a police officer already, extra points if you're a minority, this type of thing. And he basically told me, and I remember this to this day, that to get onto the state patrol, you'd have to be a Black woman with a Spanish surname, having a PhD, who was already a police officer.
Wow. You didn't check enough boxes.
Yeah, pretty much. And I didn't have the credentials for it. So, you know, and that was fine. Again, it was one of those little things that stung, but it just made me even more resilient to continue on with my dream. So I just kept on testing different places. I tested North Dakota Highway Patrol. I tested Texas Department of Public Safety. I was getting so close on all of them. Texas Department of Public Safety, I tested, I was number 121 on the list. They took 120 people, but they didn't have a waiting list. 60 people flunked out. I had a friend that went down with me. He made it because he was initially a Texas resident. His family lived in Texas. He was former Marine, which I was not in the military. And so he had those extra credentials as well. But I was number 121 on the list. They didn't have a waiting list. And so even though 60 people dropped out of the academy, because most police academies, just like basic training, they can be tough. 60 people dropped out. They tested again for people. I just couldn't afford to go down and test again. And I went through all the testing because I was coming from out of state, went to psychological, the physical, everything all in one weekend. They made special arrangements for myself and this other guy. And we lived with, for that weekend, and I think a Monday, with relatives of his. And so, again, it just made my resolution even stronger. And eventually I got on with a small department of 35 people in Wyoming. I tested out there, and I happened to see the ad. I was in insurance at the time, and I was looking to become an underwriter because having my own agency, with all the hours I was putting in, I was pretty much making less than minimum wage. My secretary was making more than I was per hour. And so with that, I said, you know, I need to get onto a salary type of situation. And I happened to see an ad. Whenever I saw an ad for law enforcement where I didn't have to already be certified, if I could, I would travel to wherever it was. And so I was lucky to get on with a small department in Wyoming. And they had some 20 people testing. I tested number one. And within 2 weeks after testing, I was offered the position, moved out there. And as they say, the rest is history.
Wow. This is amazing because I listened to your story. I got so many notes. I can't even go through them all. But, you know, I was one of three kids. I was the youngest. My dad was very much into the girls. My sister's part of me. Not a lot of huge age difference, but again, growing up in the 70s, I was sickly. I had health issues. So I wasn't really, I got into sports, had to quit them because my asthma got so bad. But my dad was always, maybe it was just, I look back at it, he was harder on me than his girls, my sisters, but it helped shape me into who I've become today. So this isn't about my origin story, but
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a lot of things that I connect with you. So my dad was about the girls too. He was a huge sports person, opposite of your dad. Still is today. My dad played everything. When I was younger, I remember him hauling me to the local drill hall for the military because he had friends in the military. He never served in the military, but go to local drill hall and they'd have basketball, and I'd sit there and watch him play basketball. He played baseball. He played hockey. He played everything that you could think of.
Yeah,
Plus,
imagine.
very successful business owner. So a lot to look. You look back then in awe of your parent, but it was also a lot to try to live up to as a young person.
Right.
Oh, your dad does all these sports. Why can't you? You know what I mean? All the stigma, the labeling that people put onto us. So, and I was in Cubs as well, Cub Scout, right? So I
Yeah.
did that as well growing up, and did the camping. And even though my asthma was bad, I just loved it.
Well, absolutely.
Wasn't really close with my dad love my dad. You know, if he listens to this, he knows I love him. We've never even, he's 80 now this year. We don't necessarily have, we're not close, but we've gotten to a point where we can communicate about things, right? Total different personalities and the way we drive things. But he taught me a lot working for him growing up as to, how to treat people in relationships, how to treat people, you know, when you're building your business, how you should be compassionate. He had very much the village mentality that you and I talked to before we started recording. He was very much about taking care of his farmers, because he owned an farmer implement dealership, taking care of his staff, volunteering in the local community, very much into all the sports. And the message there for you and for the listeners that, well, a lot of the listeners know already, is my dad put everything above me. Right. He didn't realize it, but that's what it was. That generation, it was about taking care, you know, woman stays at home, takes care of the kids, takes care of the family, you know, man goes out, does what he wants.
Yeah.
Right?
And that was the situation I had.
That's what it was, though.
Yeah, that was the situation I had, except least in your situation, and I'm not saying this is a good or a bad thing, it's just something I had to live with, is the fact that other than the fact that, as far as, you know, I knew as a kid, my dad was a good person. He was always there for us. You know, his only vice, as far as I know, was smoking, which he did give up.
My dad too.
Yeah, and you know, as we got older, and other than that, he was there for us. Which, you know, in that day and time, you didn't see as many divorces as you do nowadays or whatever. You know, he stayed with my mom until my mom passed away. They were together many years, and she passed away in '93, and my dad passed away in 2007. And so that was the one good thing, I guess, that he did pass on to me, is the fact that family is everything. And I just, for lack of something better, I didn't have anything to look up to as far as that's concerned, other than the fact that he was a good family man. You know, which definitely helped, because that's what I tried to do in my life.
Yeah, and it's easy to pick apart our parents, our upbringing. And obviously some of the listeners, you know, there's nothing you can find good, because I know my own clientele base of the last 19 years in finance and all the coaching I've done, not everybody can pick out some nuggets of goodness from their upbringing. So at least you have something. I do too. I look up to my dad, certain things. He wasn't present. I wish he would have been more present, but it is what it is. So it took me until I got into my 20s and then into my 30s. The more I self-developed my 6 inches, the more I realized and appreciated the nuggets of goodness from my father and what he taught me, and then realized and disconnected from my negative mindset, all the things that I wish he would have done or he should have done that I thought, right? It just wasn't a reality. So you can't, we constantly live in the past as an adult, which, you know, the past is the past. So I wanted to learn from the past, not live in the past, right? So, you know, and you talked about the fact of, you know, you did mention that specifically about, you know, high school intramural sports. You got into drama because you weren't really into the sports. Me, I got into computers, right? The first PC lab that was in our province, for listeners that are new, that's the same as a state if you're in the US. And the first lab that they built for PCs back in like 82 was in our high school. So I got involved with the computer teacher who was learning along with us, and we got to play around because he wanted to learn as much as us, and we become good friends, and we started going to competitions around the province, programming. And so for you it was drama, for me it was computers. I probably, because I was very introverted, I still am. I've had to force myself to be an extrovert and work at it. But yeah, so then you talked about priest as a role model. I have a couple of those. I was an altar server, was in choir, so I can relate to a lot of what you talked about. That's why I was smiling throughout listening to you. It was, I knew that we had lots of connections even before I did, if that makes sense, right? Just sometimes you just know. that somebody is meant to be in your tribe and you're meant to be in their tribe, right?
In fact, it's funny that you mentioned about the computer because, well, and I'm going to show my age a little bit here. There was no such thing for the most part as, any type of computers like that, everything back when I was in high school. I didn't do anything with computers until my junior year in college. And we used a timeshare with the University of Minnesota via 1200. It was either 800 or 1200 baud teletype coupler, and with tape. If you didn't have the tape with all the little punch holes in it, and you could only use it one time, because if you try to use it more than that, all your instructions were incorrect. This was with basic.
I remember all that.
Yeah, and that was my very first the computer thing. But that even got me hooked into what I ended up doing with regard to computers later on in life.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can remember working on the first Radio Shack TR80, I think it was, even before
TRS-80,
IBM.
right.
Yeah, before they even, I remember working on them. And then Timex had the Sinclair. You remember the Sinclair?
Oh, yeah.
And then you had the evolution of the first, the IBM ATs and the XTs. And then all of a sudden Commodore got into, which was a Canadian company. Most people don't realize the Commodore 64 and then the Commodore 128. And I got into gaming. I got into ripping them apart and working on them electronics wise. And that's how I ended up, having a mentor tell me you should get into electronics, right? You should get into the engineering side of it. You're very analytical. And anyway, long story short, we've got a lot of commonalities. Right, like you said, you realize your limitation of sports, and you got into doing other things. You can sit and what do most people do? They wallow in self-pity, and I see an evolution of the fact that you always wanted to strive to find your niche, your place in this world, and you were successful at it, from going through college and doing the EDP to even having plagiarism on a paper in 6 months. Like, that's ridiculous. We won't even get into that.
That was absolutely ridiculous.
Nuts, right? Your uncle being in law enforcement, that's cool, right? Giving you, all it takes is one person to create a spark within our mindset, and then it to connect to our heart and soul. And that, so I really appreciated that, and not wanting to give up. Private security, 12-hour shifts, to going to applying to 9, where they're doing 9 testing, 10,000 people, 25 positions, and you didn't check enough boxes. Like, it's just, I hope the listeners are really resonating with this, because I certainly am. I really appreciate the fact of your stick-to-itiveness and your want to never quit. And that's my whole message. Give a heck about yourself. And through that process of giving a heck, you're going to touch a lot of other people's lives and help them elevate to a point where you are now, which we're going to get into right away here. I'm fascinated by you and your life, and always wanting to fix you so that you could serve others better, right? Which is good. And you're constantly evolving, even to now in this year of 2021, and getting to know you. I can imagine how much more people you're going to touch, even though, for the listeners, you are retired from the police, but you're not retired from life.
No.
And never ever think that when you retire. That's why statistically, people that retire, they pass away within years of retirement, because they lose their drive to want to learn. Our brains, and the listeners know this because I've talked about this quite often in my vlogs, our brain is designed to constantly have input. And if it does not get input, and your brain's living on that hamster wheel along with your physical body, you slowly die. You become more susceptible to disease, to illness, to just everything. And you're more susceptible to anxiety, depression, right? Because not everybody understands the difference between the two either. Some people are living in the past, they're depressed. Other people are living in the future and they have anxiety, right? It's pretty simple concept. But I really appreciate the fact that you never gave up, and you went and kicked ass and got into that small force in Wyoming. And look at you go. I love your origin, right? It's taken up a big part of the show so far, but that doesn't matter, because it's you. Right. People need to know you. because the
Right.
rest of the story doesn't matter if they don't know where you came from and the
Right.
struggles and the trials and the tribulations, and adults proven to you that they're unreasonable. And what I mean by that is you being suspended, completely unreasonable. That's not realistic as to why people make mistakes.
Right.
I did a paper one time when I was in college for my electronics engineering, and I was at the top of our class for English and technical writing, because I was fascinated by the written word already back then in my 20s. And I got married in between going to college, right? So I actually still remember the instructor, I handed in something and he says, well, what's this? You referenced this, but it's not in, your bibliography at the end. You're not referencing it. I said, oh, you know what? I was just so tired. Kid was up last night because I got together with somebody that had a kid already, and we got married. And I said she wasn't doing well. I was up late working on this other project for this class and doing this and that. I'm sorry, it was a total oversight. You know what he said, Dwight? He said, it happens. Just fix it next time. I'm dinging you a couple marks because you didn't do it, but I know you didn't do it intentionally. So he dealt with it the right way.
Yeah.
Right.
I wasn't even given
and
that
I still got
chance.
I still got a 94
Uh-huh.
on the paper. And then I was asked there was a bunch of us were asked to present our papers in front of the class. And why did he do that? He wanted us to help us with our speaking abilities, to be able to not just put on paper and relay, but to be able to vocally relay. And he was one of the most, I wish I could remember his name, the professor, but he was very instrumental in me getting to a point where I realized how much I liked the word, the English language, and how it can be participated. But then he also gave me that inner spark to want to be able to, verbally present that as well. So
absolutely,
that's awesome. So we're going to continue on here. So the next thing I'd like to talk to you about is your NLP, right? So can you explain to listeners exactly what NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, is, and what led you to do NLP for yourself? Like this, more specifics. You did touch on it a bit, but I'd like to know more.
Okay, to kind of preface into that, and it might go back just a little bit.
Sure.
But as a police officer, I found that the one thing, if you're doing it right, you're actually coaching people and training them. Even if you're giving out a traffic citation, you're explaining what they did wrong, that they're still a good person, to be safe in the future, and you want them to be around the next day, and you don't make it a nasty thing. People are scared enough for the most part. It's just a response we have if you see blue lights in your back, or red lights, depending on where you live, in your rear view mirror. And I'm still the same way, and I did it for 32 years, and I don't freak out as much as others do, but it can still happen. And oh, is he coming after me? Let me look down at my speedometer. But and the one thing, now I helped many people during my years. Like I said, 32 years, last 18 were in information technology unit. But the one thing I remember to this day, and I tell people this because this will get into my coaching and NLP. There was this, I worked in this one particular zone, and we had 15 zones in our city. And I worked this one particular zone for about a year. And in this zone, there was this one girl that every officer who ever worked in that zone knew about. She was constantly running away. I had never worked it before, that particular call, but I knew about it. You heard it go out all the time. And in Florida, where I was at the time, this was not in Minnesota, or in Wyoming rather, I did go to a department, a much larger department in South Florida, just west of Fort Lauderdale. And this girl would run away. I had no idea why, but I knew what we had in Florida was what we call juvenile pickup orders. So basically, if a kid runs away, they're under the age of 18, mom or dad call it in that they've run away. They automatically put it from a police report. They put it into the NCIC system, which is the National Crime Information Center computer. And it's like running a warrant check. If somebody has a warrant, it'll pop up in that computer. It's the same thing with the juvenile pickup order. And so she was in the system almost constantly. And dispatchers had her information all the time. It just made it easier to put her in. And what ended up happening was I knew there was a juvenile pickup order on her when I happened to take a break at a McDonald's. It was a Friday night. I knew I was going to be busy. So I had my normal 10-minute break or so. And I said, let me grab a hamburger now because I won't get a chance later. I saw her there with some other kids. She was probably 14, 15 at the time. I don't recall exactly, but 14 or 15. And I knew there was a juvenile pickup order on her. And I could have just gone up and said, hey, and I don't even remember her name, but I'll just call her Mary. Hey, Mary, you ran away again. I've got a juvenile pickup order. I hate to do this, but I have to take you in. I didn't do that in this situation. Something told me that's not the way to handle this because she's only going to do it again. There's some underlying problem. I have to figure out what it is. So I pulled her over to the side. I said, can I talk to you for a moment? She said, okay. I think she was apprehensive, figuring she was going to be in handcuffs. And I said, so what's going on? I kind of, in a quick couple of minutes, try to figure out why she was running away. She told me what every kid does. Mom doesn't listen to me. There was no dad in the household. I think mom worked a couple of jobs. Mom never listens to me. And of course, that's the woe of every teenager, that parents just don't listen to them and this type of thing. But most teenagers don't run away from home all the time. So I knew there was something else going on. And so I talked a little bit more with her and I had to get off a break, but I said, listen, I'm not going to pick you up. Are you staying someplace tonight? Are you thinking about going home? She said, no. I said, okay. Are you staying someplace where you could be safe? She said, yes, I'm with so-and-so. And I knew of them. I knew that they had good family in the city. And so I said, okay, please promise me. Now you owe me because I'm not taking you in. Promise me that you'll stay with them and stay safe and that you'll go back home Sunday afternoon. Can you do that for me? She said, yes. I didn't know if she was lying to me or not, but I trusted her. I knew where the house was. I ended up calling out on a self-initiated call at that house. And I talked to mom and I said, listen, I know that you've reported Mary as missing and I just saw her. She's okay. And I explained the whole situation, what we had just talked about. And I said, can you give me any insight on what's going on? She basically gave me insight that she was working multiple jobs just to keep things on and that she was usually exhausted. And whenever Mary would not do something or do something, as kids will do, she would jump down her throat. And I just knew that wasn't right. And I'm not saying that I probably ever did with my daughter, but, I just knew that wasn't right. And it was obviously what was causing her, since she said, mom doesn't listen to me. I knew that she was cutting her off and just jumping down her throat. So I said, what I'd like to do is have you, and I suggested a bunch of things. Again, that's what a good coach will do, suggest things because people have the answers. They know the answers. They just are either afraid to do it or something along those lines. And I said, I really think you folks need some help that I can't give you, whether it be a priest, a school psychologist, school counselor, somebody. You really do need to talk this out. Now, she's going to come home on Sunday afternoon. Please don't yell at her for being gone. She's safe. I know she's safe. If you feel like talking to her, try to keep it positive. Try to explain that, we need to straighten this out and go on from there. It turns out that even though I was in that zone for another 6 months or so, I didn't hear that call again. Now, obviously, I wasn't on every day of the week, but I never heard a call again. And it, in the back of my mind, it puzzled me when I thought about it, when I drove in the area of their house. but I didn't even give it a second thought. Must have been about 10 years later. I used to work special details at an arena. Well, there are different places in town where police officers work off duty for the business, security or whatever. We had a large arena in our city. And I was working in a public area, and this woman walked up to me and said, "Hi, Officer Ferguson." I said, "Yes." She goes, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "No, I'm sorry, I don't." And and she told me her name, and it didn't really click at the time. And she said, "You don't remember me at all, do you?" And I said, "Please, just tell me." And she explained that she was that girl that I didn't pick up. And I well up every time I tell this story, but she was that girl that I didn't pick up. It affected her so much so she and her mom got along well after that. They did get some professional help. They stopped being adversaries and became family again. And she was married. She had a child of her own. She remembers what she went through. And she said she is a professional now. She went to college, became a registered nurse, and she's doing well for herself. She is married, as I mentioned, and she would never want on her daughter what she lived through. And it was because, I'm sorry, it was because I didn't pick her up that day. That's when I realized that no matter what I did in my 32 years as a cop, this was why I did it.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so, um, to answer your question from a few minutes ago, what I ended up doing when I got out, when I left the department, is, and again, I mentioned I don't want to retire. I'll keep on doing whatever I'm doing health wise, or health promoting, um, till I can't just do it anymore. And but I don't play golf very well. I don't watch soap operas, so I have to do something. I'm a type A personality. My wife says I'm too analytical. I probably am, especially with having been a law enforcement officer for as long as I have been, and getting to the drilling down into things. Why, like yourself, finding out why something works or doesn't work, and going from there.
Yeah.
And which is what I did even with that family. Why isn't this working? And so with that, I decided to start my company. I had part-time companies, developing websites and things like this while I was a law enforcement officer, something I could do on the side. Every cop, every firefighter has a part-time side gig. They just do. It's part of the culture. And not for any other reason that sometimes they just don't get paid enough. So they want to make a little extra on the side. And I did that above and beyond working the special details. And so I decided the one thing I knew, especially after being in the information technology unit, starting it, working with dispatch, working with other different units and everything. And as I mentioned to you in our pre-conference, setting up the voice over IP system for the police department. And it didn't cost me anything to get certified with different providers. We talked about Vonage, for example. There's other ones, and I just won't mention all their names, but I got certified with them. And essentially, I became a reseller for their services. I could use anybody I wanted to. So I was a telecommunications consultant, and I could offer them anything I wanted to, anything that I was certified and partnered with to be able to sell them. And that was going well until the pandemic. I lost 50% of my clients, actually more like 62% of my clients went out of business. I lost virtually all of my prospects. Either they went out of business or they decided that they didn't want to make any changes because they may not be in business, much longer, or whatever the case might be. They were actually cutting back or They weren't in an office anymore, so they didn't need a phone system there, this type of thing. And I got to thinking about it, and I said, this can't depress me. I've got to do something. And as I mentioned to my wife is a coach. She's a school teacher, but she is a coach. She, as well as I, have been coaching people in another profession for many years. Being a mentor, I guess you could talk about it. I was a big brother type of thing in the police department, where they combined kids that didn't have fathers with police officers, and we used to meet several times a week. So I did that also as a police officer. And it wasn't as satisfying as that one girl, but this was something I also did to help people. And so when I didn't have as many clients, and I didn't see anything happening soon with regard to the economy, it was getting worse. I talked to my wife about it, and she, being a coach, said, "Listen, what did you do for 32 years as an officer?" And I said, "Well, I helped people." She goes, "Exactly. What do? I help people." She goes, "Why don't you consider getting certified as a coach like I did?" And she was just a certified life coach at the time. She was going through her master life coaching courses at the time as well. We were doing this all online virtually, because everybody had now switched to doing things virtually as compared to in person, which actually saved us a bunch of money, because otherwise you'd have to go someplace, spend a weekend, whatever the case might be. And I thought long and hard about it. And I said, yeah, that's what I need to do. So I got certified as a life coach. I took the next thing and certified before my wife, actually, as a master life coach. Of course, I had 8 hours a day that she didn't have because I was retired. So I was able to do that. And during that time, it turns out that the instructor, the owner of the certification process, who had actually been trained by one of the originators of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. He's also a certified clinical hypnotherapist. He's a master NLP trainer and a master NLP practitioner. And I started researching, well, where do I go from here? He's involved in hypnotherapy and NLP. Let me check out this NLP thing. And he had, at that time, the 3 courses that he bundled together: practitioner, master practitioner, and trainer. So I paid for them all up front. And then for the next 9 months, I did nothing but train. Passed all the exams and everything else, and some of them were really tough. One of them required at least a 4-page case study. Mine actually turned to be 16 pages. And because he gave minimums, but I can't see how you could do the minimums. You just, no way, if you were doing it right. In fact, for my NLP trainer final exam, there were multiple choice questions and everything on all of them, and essays on all of them. But I had to give a video presentation as if I was training someone. I had to, upload it to his server. But he said it has to be at least 15 minutes and no more than an hour. Well, he wanted several NLP techniques, and he wanted, and several to me is 2, but I gave him 3. And he wanted at least 4 or 5 other things. The only way you could do it in 15 minutes is basically give you would have to have about 2 minutes for each, just to give a definition of them. You're not teaching in that point. My final exam video was 52 minutes long. And I probably could have gone a little bit longer, but I knew I was running out of time. And needless to say, I don't know what my final was. He just says whether you passed or failed. And I feel I did really good. In fact, I still have it. I got rid of the first part that said, "This is my exam," or whatever. And I have the 47 minutes of it that I can actually use as a video that for people who are thinking about getting into it, for example.
The testimonial, your own testimonial.
Yeah, it is for the most part. And
great.
so where I hit those things, which are very important to it. And so basically that's how I got into NLP, because of having that information and wanting to help people, not only as a practitioner, but I'm more towards a trainer. I did a lot of that in the police department, helping. I was a field training officer at one point. I had to help all as we got new technology. I had to train all the officers, and we had just under 200 officers on any new databases, any new equipment that was technological in whatever manner, whether it be a new radio or whatever, had to do the training on it. So I know that I can reach more people in the training than a one-on-one as a practitioner. And I want to help people. I want to pay forward all the good things that I've had in life.
It's
And
amazing.
so
I love it.
that's why I became a trainer.
That's awesome, though.
I didn't
You're a
want to just
great
be a
storyteller
practitioner.
too, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're really good at
That's
delivering.
probably from being a cop.
Well, yeah, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. We're all a culmination of the things that we learn in life through our different steps. And as we continue to go those steps, continue to, if we choose, that is, to evolve.
Right.
And you obviously have I just, there's so many things I jotted down. It's just amazing. I appreciate the clarity, and I don't mind the fact that you backed up to get to that point of how you got involved with NLP and how your wife encouraged you. That's amazing. What I'd like to ask, you have earned numerous awards and certifications and received many accolades throughout your career. Can you tell me one that means the most to you and why?
Okay, that's a real good question. You warned me about this, and I never even thought about this.
That's okay. So yeah, just
probably.
What was the number one thing that really touched you throughout your whole career? It doesn't matter if it's even up to now.
I don't think I can single it out to just one. There's three in three different parts of my life. All the volunteer hours I gave, if you go over, I believe it's 4,000 lifetime hours of volunteerism, that's how you get the Presidential Call to Service Award. You can only get one of those. All the I mentioned numerous gold levels. You can get different gold levels by doing over, I believe it's 500 hours for any given organization, and I have like 3 of those, which went towards my presidential call to action one. So as far as, and I don't volunteer much now because I'm trying to really build up my business as I'm doing now, but I that meant a lot to me when I got that, because of the fact that I was volunteering and I was helping people. That's why you volunteer. So at that point, I think that was big. Back when I was an insurance person and had my own insurance agency that I did for 8 years before getting into law enforcement, I did receive, and you might be aware of this, there's an organization, I think it's worldwide, called Life Underwriting Training Council. And I did receive my LUTCF, which is designation, which is Life Underwriting Training Council Fellow. And so I not only trained other insurance agents in life insurance and disability, the courses that LUTC did give. And that was through the American College of Financial Services, I believe it's called. And so at that point in my life, that was really important to me, not just because I put it on my business card. It's kind of like being a CLU or a CFA or something like that. Yeah. I did it because it meant something to me. It means that I was able to help other people again. I didn't care that I had it on there because now I knew more about it. I was able to not only train other people when I was a trainer for LUTC, but I was able to explain things better to my clients. I didn't see myself selling them something. I saw myself training them why they might need something, whether it was for me or someone else. And then now probably my biggest thing, and it's a dual thing, the trainer, NLP trainer and master practitioner. As far as I'm concerned, they go hand in hand. I forgot who said it, but I think it was Albert Einstein that said, if you can't explain what you do or a complicated thing to a 6-year-old, then you don't know enough about it yourself. And
Fair
so
enough.
that's real important to me, that to really be able to help as a practitioner or to train other people, I have to really know what I'm doing. And so in this part of my life, I think that's the big thing. Other than that, the only other lifetime achievement, as far as I'm concerned, is having been with my wife for the last 36 years. She has been my prize. I definitely don't deserve her, but she has been the person for me that has, not only with regard to how she helped me make this decision, but oh yeah, we've been through everything that every couple goes through. But um, as far as my life from as an adult, for the most part, at least the last 36 years, and I may not sound like it, and I'm not sure if this is just audio or video for your
It'll be both.
listeners.
It'll be both.
Both, okay. Um, in 2.5 months, I'm going to be turned 70 years old.
Yeah, and life doesn't stop,
No, it doesn't.
right? And it's our society needs to value the fact of people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s as much as they value somebody that's in their 40s, their 50s. We never stop being able to serve others, and you've proven that. Like, I love the answer. You took it from me wanting one thing to three, but it's at different stages of your life.
Yeah.
And it just really was, it was very touching to actually listen to you talk about that. And your number one achievement, your prize of your wife, and she was your anchor. I can hear it. And when you've brought her up numerous times throughout our conversation, she's been a big influence on you. And obviously you've probably been an influence on her. I'd have to talk to her. Hopefully someday I will, as we talked about prior. But that's amazing. Everything that I hear from you from the moment we've started this till now has been about growing your 6 inches so that you can continually serve others. And it's just yeah, listeners, you need to check out, certainly check out Jan. We're going to end up having to have Jan on again, maybe 6 months from now, because you'll be a little bit farther into your current, your current avenue of where you're going with your coaching, your NLP, your master practitioner. And I'm excited to learn more about you. But at this point, Jan, if you have to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
All I can really say, I think you covered it perfectly. You just can't do it. I'll have enough time to rest when they put me in that pine box. Until then, I'm going to keep on giving. I'm going to keep on living, and yeah, you have to give a heck. You can't give up for any reason. As a law enforcement officer, I can never understand when I go on a suicide call how anything could be bad enough to not want to live. There's just I can't fathom it. Life is a great thing. We learn even when we are down. We learn valuable lessons if we look for the lessons. You can't just roll over and say, oh, well, it's life. No, you have to take, I think what perfect thing is, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And so you got to give a heck. You just got to keep on going.
Yeah, I like that. I always tell people, you added with until you're in a pine box. I tell people I'm going to continue to learn and expand and always want to serve others until my last breath is gone. Because what people don't realize is the best leaders in the world are the ones that don't label themselves as a leader. They label themselves as a servant, serving others and doing always the right things. It doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean we're gonna, not still even in your, coming up on 70 or me in my 50s, that we're not going to continually, have a mistake. But the biggest thing is what do you do with that mistake? Evolve it into a life lesson, which you help drive you forward. You learn from the mistake, like I said, life lesson, then you create more wisdom. Obviously, coming up on your at 70, you have more wisdom than I would in certain areas. But at my age, I have wisdom in areas that you wouldn't. So that's why
Absolutely.
associations are so important on the journey of not giving up and wanting to always give a heck, is constantly evolving our associations and our connections, which I am proud to say we've done that today. I have one more
Absolutely.
association, one more person I can call friend that can continually help me level up my 6 inches, and my knowledge and my wisdom in my years can help possibly you as well.
Absolutely.
And it's exciting. It's very
Absolutely.
exciting. I've
It
really
really is.
enjoyed our conversation. So our time is almost up. I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners what's the best way to reach you, Jan?
Best way to reach me, I have a personal site above my regular business sites, and that is of course the HTTPS in front of it, but it's Jan F. That's JANF 360.com. JanF360.com. It has links to every way to get in contact with me, every one of my websites, all of my social media. All of it is in one location.
Okay, I'll make sure that's in the show notes when the show goes live, and listeners know how to reach that. For the new listeners, just go to giveaheck.com and you can click on my podcast portal button and it'll take you in. You'll be able to see Jan's picture. The show will be that when it's live, and you'll be able to click on and read the basic show notes, which will include links on the janf360.com and anything else that in regards to the social media connections, as Jan mentioned, you can find there. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Jan. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.